Hi, guys, and welcome to the Zoom and Zoom Out podcast, a podcast about perspective and failure, where we, Akash Vikram Shroff, Parth Bihani, and myself, Aryan Chaudhary, like to interview very interesting and very qualified guests and try to derive key takeaways about how they got there. We like to analyze their journeys, understand what worked for them, what systems they used, any failures they encountered. And we're really happy to host Mr. Rishi Vasudev for today's episode.
So, guest today, he did his undergrad in engineering and then a postgraduate management diploma in marketing. Rishi Vasudev then started out as a fabric salesperson for 5 years, and working his way through the fashion industry, Rishi went on to take numerous high-profile roles, from being the CEO of Calvin Klein to the head of fashion for Flipkart in marketing, and even the CEO of Lifestyle and Home Center. A few months ago, he left this role and ventured out to start his own startup, Goat Brand Labs, and has raised over $36 million for this. Thank you so much for taking our time and being here today with us, Rishi.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on your show.
So, I'm sure the burning question in all of our minds is relating to Goat Labs and the amount of money you've raised, because those sort of figures are sort of imaginary in our head. But before we get into that, I want to speak to you a little bit about your early career. And we'll build up to what you're presently doing. So could you tell us a little bit about how you got into this line? So what was it like as soon as you got out of college?
Yeah. So I studied electronics engineering, but I realized in my first 2 years of engineering that that's not something I enjoyed. So got through that course and then got into marketing, MBA. And that's where my calling was. And after college, I really wanted a job in marketing, and I was not very clear which sector I would get into. So I joined this large group in India, Aditya Birla Group, who are into many different businesses. Unfortunately, at that time, there were not too many brands business that the Birla Group was in. It was a very large player in commodities like aluminium, cement, etc. And textiles was one business that they were in, where they had a couple of brands called Grasim and Graviera Suiting. So I said, let me get started here. And once I got into the textile side of it, then kept moving through the value chain from textiles into apparel, into offline, and then online retailing. And that's what has kept me in this line.
Wow, that sounds quite incredible. When we were talking to you earlier, you mentioned how you initially thought that you had a slow start and how you were telling us about comparing yourself to others and how you got over that. Could you take us through that journey a bit?
Yeah. So earlier in your career, in the early days of your career, you're always looking at your batchmates and seeing who's where, what are others doing, and there are many times which many of us go through saying, are you on the right track? Is it going to take you to where you would ultimately like to finish? And at that time, there are many long years that you spend in difficult assignments in some of the industries which may not be as hot as tech or some of the other industries. And you feel at times that you are kind of slow off the block. But what I realize now is that those years which I spent in fabric sales and retailing and reaching out to retailers across the country, meeting consumers, trying to create new products for them, etc. They're all years which have really, I've caught up on that in the sense that those have really added to my experience. And then as I have moved forward in my career, I've been able to use that knowledge very effectively. And my subsequent movement from fabric into apparel, into offline, online, retailing has been something that's been very quick. And thanks to the number of years I spent, the connections I made, the kind of people I met, the knowledge they shared with me. So all of that has really helped me and is still helping me today when I think of this new venture, Goat. Those years were very critical, but in a long career, many of you would go through those phases where things would not seem as exciting or as fast-paced as you would have imagined when you were in college. But go through those years, because those are the ones which will really count when you are taking the big decisions later.
Yeah, I think that's a really powerful message because there's a lot of times when you're not quite sure whether you're on the right track or whether you're progressing as fast as you want to. But the skills you're picking up at the same time are going to be very beneficial later on. Now, one thing I noticed when we spoke to you earlier and you were describing your career path to us, it's always been a lot of movement and a lot of growth. So I can sort of tell that you've always liked to reinvent yourself. You keep up with all the new technologies. You went from offline to online and taking up big jobs at companies like Flipkart. So could you tell us a little bit about how you developed this approach and whether you would recommend it?
Yeah. So one of the principles I have kept for myself is that as long as I'm getting the opportunity to do what I want to, I will not quit, right? So whichever roles I have taken up, I have always placed myself saying that even if it's a tough job, if not me, who else can do it? And therefore, really got into the details of each assignment and tried to ensure that, I can come up with whatever best possible solution is at that point for that problem statement with the resources that I may have. And having done that hard work, whenever I hit a wall where I say, okay, the organization or the circumstances are not allowing me to grow bigger than what could be possible to take this opportunity forward, I have then taken on something else. So that's been my, my path. So which has meant that in every assignment, except the last one, I have spent long years. I spent at least 4 or 5 years. My first company I spent 9 years. My second company I spent close to 7 years. And in Flipkart I spent 6 years. So I've spent long years. However, there comes a time where you believe you can do more than what the current circumstances are allowing you. And that's when I have pushed myself to go out of my comfort zone, even though I may be holding a very comfortable position in those organizations, to relearn, unlearn, relearn, and then train myself to do something bigger and more distant from what I was doing before that. So, which has always put me in a position where chances of failure could be high because you are moving out of your comfort zone, you're going out of a space that you have been comfortable for 6 years, 8 years, and trying to acquire new skills. But that pressure that puts on you really makes you again go back to the same formula of getting into the thick of things, going into the basics, trying to understand what are the key nuances that are there to solve that problem, and you end up having more success and adding more knowledge to yourself, and that helps you in the long run because you are gaining big chunks of knowledge as you move forward. Like I read a book which said, grit is good, but too much grit is not good. So sometimes we say that even if it's a tough environment, we should just hang on. You should hang on. You should give it your best. But then there's a time when your heart and mind says that, okay, I've given it enough. I could do better with something else, and that's the time to move and then try a new challenge and put yourself in a difficult position. But then in the long run, you will feel that it was a good decision to take.
Yeah, that's actually so interesting to know, Mr. Rishi. Your journey from being a fabric salesperson to now running your own startup and actually raising $36 million in this past week. It's just so inspiring for like people like me. And you spoke to us about a couple of systems in the call before that we had. About journaling and putting your thoughts down and like putting your thoughts down in one page, if I remember correctly. And are there any systems that you use that you want to like to talk to our audience about?
Yeah. So one of the things I've followed is that in my first year at the first company, which is Aditya Birla Group, we had a year-long training. Till this date, I remember every single training program that I went through, and I went into detail of each of the different businesses that we went through. We went through businesses. We went through the strategy department. I spent a couple of months on fiber, which is the Nagda plant that they have. I went through cement business. And in every assignment, what I've tried to do is get into the details and get into a place where I can say, okay, let me think first principles. Let me think what are the basic tenets. Let me not be carried away with things like this has been done this way, so we should just continue doing it. And that has helped me. The second thing that's helps me a lot is that in the old traditional way, I maintain a diary, and when I'm really in thought, I shut down my laptop, I stop looking at emails, and I try to write down what it is that really I'm trying to solve, and it really helps me bring the thoughts out clearly. Even when there are people who come to me and they are trying to discuss an opportunity area and are not able to put it perfectly, I always say the same thing, that go back, write down one page, put down the problem statement, the possible solutions, and which are the parts which are the ones which need discussion. It really helps in bringing both parties onto the same page, and therefore you are just focusing on the item that needs to be discussed. So I think writing down, putting things in perspective, and going into details and first principles are things that have really worked for me. Second is, I think relationships matter a lot. I was telling that, a lot of people talk about people who are well networked as people who know the big guys, right? But when there are big guys who are meeting each other and they've not known each other for a very long time, it's more a give and take relationship. Each one is trying to get something out of the other. But during your long journey in corporate career and otherwise, you come across a lot of people, right? At that point of time, those people may seem unimportant, they may seem too big, too small, too irrelevant, or too far away from what you're doing. But then little actions of kindness, little time to them, to listen to them, or little help that you give them goes a long way. And while it might seem like that we, I'm sorry, while it might seem like we just out of the blue raised so much money, the truth is that there have been a lot of forces behind this, right? Every person who's put money has reached out to people who have worked with me to check, what do you think about Rishi? They have checked on what do you think about his knowledge about this industry, and there are people who I have not met for 20 years who have come forward and said, okay, I think this is what I am doing and this could be of help to you. Can I in any way be associated? For no consideration, I just want to help you. So the amount of outpouring and reach out that has happened really tells that, relationships you build, the networks you build, the little gestures you do towards people really goes to add to what you achieve. We have just put out some posters in our office, which are inspiring quotes by some of the GOATs like Messi and Ronaldo, Usain Bolt, etc. And one of them says that, Messi says that it took me 17 years to become an overnight success. So, if you want to become an overnight success, you have to work many years towards that.
Yeah, it's so interesting. Actually, when you spoke about connections and just having the really, really strong reputation that you did, that led you to also avail the amazing opportunities that came your way, I was really confused about this. Do you think in your world it's really important to care about your reputation or to care about what others think about you? Do you think that applied to you at all?
So I would say that you have to be 10% conscious of what your reputation is, but 90% has to be the real thing, in the sense that you cannot be completely off. Like you say, I don't have a LinkedIn profile, people should figure out how to find me, etc. Then it's like being too puristic, too much of a purist. I would say that you should not try to construct a reputation, because if it's not what you are, people will find out, right? People are connected as they have never been before, right? People can pick up a phone, speak to people who you would have interacted and you were not even in your best behavior at that point of time. So you cannot fake it. But what you should do is you should really ensure that you are consistent, you have a similar behavior with everybody, because if it comes out that you are very good with one set of people and not very good with other set of people, that also doesn't throw you in good light. So you have to be consistent, and then you should also be active to ensure that to the people who matter, you are able to reach out, you are able to communicate to them, you are able to present yourself in the way that you believe is right. And that would mean that, your message then gets carried to them, and therefore it becomes bigger. Like, for example, I really want to, with this new venture, I really want to give back. I want to help startup founders. But if I just wait for people to discover that, I'm here for them, that would not be enough. I need to do that little bit of 10% to reach out to them, to communicate, to be able to give time to them so that they get to know about it, which ensures that, the product is there and you are able to reach out to the right people so that they can take the help. So that's where I believe.
Yeah, I think that's a really powerful sentiment of just building those genuine connections with a lot of people, because you don't know when down the line you can help each other and growing together. And obviously you experienced this through the growth of your startup. So let's just dive right into Goat Lab. So why did you decide to start it, especially at this point of time? And how was that process?
Yeah. So my assignment with Flipkart was a very exciting one, so I had a great 6 years there. And once I decided to move from Flipkart Myntra, I was looking to start something of my own. This was just before COVID, end of 2019. And then there was this opportunity to work with the Landmark Group, which is one of the large groups in offline. And I thought the fashion business is just 10% online. There's 90% in offline. Maybe there is a opportunity to disrupt from the offline angle. And therefore, I joined that large group as CEO and member of the board in India. However, I realized that, the things in the offline world are not moving at the same pace as they're moving in online. And I don't blame them, because offline has been going through a very steady growth, and in some places degrowth because of shift of people to online. And therefore, there are big assets that they need to protect. There's a business model that needs to be protected. And those companies cannot be as fast as the digital companies. So 6-8 months into that, I realized that, my calling was not there. And also somewhere it told me that, I think my corporate life is done. I have spent enough time being CEO or COO or board member, etc. So, now I have to break out of this whole trap of large designations, positions, etc., and really do something that really excites me. So once I quit, my initial plan was actually, I quit in January, and my initial plan was to take 6 months off, which means that till now I would have been chilling out. But so in a month I got bored. I went back to my hometown in Assam, took a month off, and when I came back in March, I started meeting a lot of startups, and suddenly started to come together, because a lot of startups, especially D2C brands, wanted to leverage my experience on the brand side, and especially the fashion brand side, as well as the digital side. And when I looked at those opportunities closely, I realized that there were many people needing help. So rather than so to put it another way, rather than treating each one as an individual person who needed attention, I said, why can't I create an infrastructure where everybody could get attention? So GOAT actually stands for greatest of all time. It's the idea is to bring together the greatest from all fields, right from the biggest venture capitalists, the biggest experts as angels, to bring a lot of people from the offline industry who are very good in product design, brand building, to get a lot of people from online, who specialize in technology, digital marketing, supply chain, etc. And then onboard and acquire and onboard brands who have reached a certain scale, and give them this whole facility which they would not be able to afford on their own. So it's an aggregation model where you take 10, 15 brands, aggregate them together, and give them the best possible backend and digital marketing growth support, so that they can start growing much faster. Otherwise, the mortality of $1 million, $2 million size brands in India is very high. In fashion, beauty, you can launch a brand very easily. You can reach a sales of about $1 to $2 million. But from there to hit 10 million, 20 million is something which becomes very tough, because you then get into struggles of inventory planning, supply chain, sourcing, digital marketing, fundraising. So we thought we'll take care of all of that for these brands and just let them kind of grow. So that's where it was born, and we were lucky to be able to raise money, and therefore now with this money and with a lot of cool people and a lot of young and a lot of experts who have joined our team already, we will be onboarding the brands and start to work on it.
Wow, that entire journey sounds wonderful and very inspiring, and there's a lot that goes into it, a lot more so than we realize because we aren't involved directly. But I want to ask you a little bit, and we spoke about this. Because when someone reaches your level of seniority, having been CEO, having had such high positions, getting into the entire process of a startup. So the small things you told us you had to do, which is the GSC registration, hiring employees, approaching investors. How was that shift, and was that scary, and how did you manage to adjust to that?
Yeah. So a lot of times, we are entrapped by what others think of us, right? So we don't want to lose those designations because what would other think of us? Yesterday he was a CEO, today he's a nobody. Because one outcome of my leaving my previous job could have easily been that we didn't raise this fund, and yet we were doing what we have set out to do. Maybe more slowly, maybe more bootstrapped, maybe with some of our own funds, but that was a clear possibility. So one is to get out of your head that and tell yourself that yes, okay, from tomorrow I'm not going to be called a CEO of a large company. I'm not going to have a large team directly reporting to me. I'm not going to have a lot of things in structure so that my day is completely structured. I know what to do from morning to afternoon for next few weeks, if not few months. So that's one thing to tell yourself. Second is this deep desire to unlearn and learn new things, because when you get into the trenches, that is the time when you start learning things, right? So I can tell you that despite my many years in Flipkart, there are so many things on digital marketing I still need to learn, because this is a field which is moving so fast. Now, you cannot be sitting up there and say, okay, I can get a summary or I can get a 5-minute briefing in a week to tell me how digital marketing works, right? So this deep desire to get in and learn is the second part. And third, maybe it's the first point, but I'll mention it third, is the purpose. So if your purpose is bigger enough, everything becomes a subset of that, right? So if the purpose is that, okay, enough of, climbing the corporate ladders, enough of having large designations, etc. Because frankly, when I was heading Flipkart Fashion and Myntra Fashion, I was handling a $3.5 billion business. Now, it can't get bigger than that in terms of the fashion industry. So, so once you say that, yeah, it can't get bigger, but it can get deeper. So then the purpose comes in. So once you say that the purpose is big enough for me to really take this up, and many people do it, when they're doing social service, they don't look at designations. They say, okay, I'm doing it for a purpose, and therefore I don't care about all the things that I have in office, right? But people have this, thing that when they are at social service, they're not expecting all the kind of support systems they need when they reach office, right? So it's about telling yourself that your work is also that purpose that you would like to pursue. And then you take on everything as it comes, right?
Right.
Obviously, the mind works faster than the body when you grow older. But as long as that you are completely ready for, I think then age is just a number.
Yeah, it's so fascinating to know your amazing journey, and you've of course been so successful. But something that you just spoke about in your previous answer about when you fall into trenches, that's where the real learning happens. And you told us a little bit about your co-founder at Goat, and about how he'd been through a number of failures himself. How did that attract you? You being such a successful person and him not coming off as the same success ladder. How did those two ends meet for you?
Yeah. So let me first define success and failure as I see it, right? Success are two sides of the same coin, and failure could be the same thing, right? So, you could be at a certain level at a certain age, and two of you could feel that you're successful, and one of you could feel that you're successful, and the other could feel you're not successful. What your mind tells you. Like if your mind tells you that, my goal is to be here by this year, and you get there, it might be success for you. But if somebody else has a different definition of success, he might say, okay, I'm only here by now, so it's not success, I need to do more, right? So therefore, success and failure is really defined by you, and a lot of happiness also comes with that. So we should not say that somebody being in a high position is more successful than somebody who's not, because ultimately we all want to be happy, right? So somebody who's not climbed his career, but he's really happy at doing what he's doing and he's adding great value, then he's a successful person. So I would like to define this as success or failure. Coming to your second point on my co-founder, interesting story is that when I quit my job and I was meeting different startups to really figure out what's happening in this whole startup community, what are people building. This was one of the brands that he had built from scratch, which was doing quite well. And I said, okay, let me support these guys. I put some angel money in his company. And a couple of months later, the company kind of went bust because they had been raising money from angels and they had been building inventory to go with the sales that they had been getting, but planning was a little off, and therefore, as COVID struck, they had a real cash problem and they were not able to come out of that, right? Yeah. Which told me both things. That one is that a lot of these founders need help, and second is that somebody like this who has seen the ups and downs of a startup is somebody that who would teach me a lot, because I would come from the other side where when you are in a large corporate, even if you make more mistakes, the corporate with its backing, with its deep pockets or its large infrastructure is able to cover up for some of them. But for startups, that's not the truth. If they are in their infancy. So if they make mistakes, either somebody bails them out or they just get out of business, right? So that's where I met him, and the fact that he's been through that journey was actually the success that he got, right? So he might be thinking that I failed in my business, but that failure became a success because we decided to work together and we could raise some money. So the important thing was experience, and that's what actually counted in the end, rather than whether that brand that he was running actually got out of the woods or not. So therefore I would say that as long as you're doing what you love, each of the things that you do is an experience. The outcomes may vary, and how you react to the outcome is really how you tune your mind, and therefore some could look at it as success or failure.
Yeah.
And could be happy or sad with it.
Yeah, I really love that definition of success as being one about experience and one about your own happiness. Because if you keep chasing success based on external factors or external designations, then you're just going to be in this constant cycle of anxiety and wanting more and never feeling fulfilled. That's definitely something that's really interesting to think about. And there was another thing you told us about, which was your shift from offline to the whole tech-based world, right? And you told us about how people were questioning whether you could make it given your age, and that it should be more of younger college students taking on this tech world. So could you tell us a bit about how you navigated that and what that experience was and how you're applying it to this current startup?
Yeah. So when I joined Flipkart in 2014, those early days of e-commerce in India, and Flipkart was really doing well in books, general merchandise, and electronics categories. Fashion was still seen as a category that would be done by verticals like Myntra and Jabong, rather than horizontals like Flipkart. And even in the US, Amazon had not been very successful in fashion, and they were trying very hard at that time. So when I joined, the whole team was a bunch of youngsters, very bright guys, very good with tech, data, analytics, but they were not from fashion background, and they had not had the experience that I had, and therefore bulk of the people in the team used to believe that there's a certain way of doing e-commerce, and people like me who had many years in offline would bring in an experience which is not relevant to the online world, right? So the first task for me was to really understand what they understand, which I don't understand, right? So really, even though it was an e-commerce world, things move very fast, but I took the time to really get in and understand their language, start to talk their language, start to talk the analytics and the data language that they were so used to and comfortable with, and then bring in the layer of fashion onto it. So for example, just to give a small, simple example, in horizontals, one of the big metrics is that what is the conversion rate, and what are the units per visit. So if you go 3 times, they would like to see how many units did you buy on 3 visits, right? Which means that a fast checkout is what they would like to do, which is very good metric for search categories. Like you look for a book, did you find it? If you didn't find it in first go and you had to come again, which means something is broken in search and needs to be fixed, right? That's how the tech world sees the metric. However, when you come to fashion, if I come and say I want a shirt, the idea is not always to show you the best-selling shirt. Sometimes you could have just come and said, okay, show me shirts, where it might mean that take me to the shirt store and let me look around, right? Which means you would be wanting a browse behavior. But the tech guys would say, no, if books they buy very fast, why couldn't they buy fashion very fast, right? So that's how I brought in this whole concept of saying, let's not hurry it up, let them browse, right? So rather than putting a discount card up there where people would get bored by seeing 50, 60, 70% off and there was nothing new, we started putting out cards where we would show them what celebrities were wearing, what is the latest fashion trend, and get them to browse a little more and change one unit metric from units per visit to units per unique visitor, which means it didn't matter if Parth came 5 times in the month, as long as he bought, I'm happy, right? Yeah. Which meant that I was getting him to spend more time and come more often because I was showing him content which he loves. And if you see, most of offline retail happens like that when people come in, you say, just look around. If you like something, we're here to help you. Rather than saying, sir, what do you want? Like an OTC store where they're selling, or liquor store where they just want you to come in and move out very quickly. So this brought in this whole, we started a project called Avatar, the tech teams got together, they built a whole experience module, and that started to show great results for us, which others were not doing it because they were still following the age-old practice of how tech had been built for horizontals. So that was my moment where I believed that, yes, I have kind of learned what these youngsters do. I've kind of been able to upgrade my knowledge to be as fast as them, as sharp thinking as them, as quick as them, because in offline world you are a little scared to make mistakes. Stakes are much higher. In online, you can fail fast and then still move forward. So I learned those bits, and then I brought in some of my experience. And then as you have a few successes from your past learning and you adopt the new learning, then you start to find the right balance and people kind of start to go with the projects that you are pushing for, right? So that's how the journey was. And therefore, as I start this new journey, most of the people who have joined me, like my first employee joined straight out of college. He was studying in IIT Chennai, and he had an admission in IIM Ahmedabad, which he postponed by a year. Now I feel at home working with such young guys who are half my age because my mind has been tuned to them, right? That, on one side I can talk the deep fashion language, bring in the art side of it, and then there is the whole science side of it, which is based on data, technology, analytics, and therefore, love the confluence of both worlds.
Yeah, that's actually such an interesting anecdote that I'm so glad that you shared with us, because it perfectly demonstrated how all your fashion background and mixed with the tech and the data side of it worked so well together to improve the experience for customers. And I'm sure Goat Brands is going to help many other companies do that over the coming few years. But moving slightly away from from the business side of things, I wanted to speak to you a little bit about your running, because you spoke to us about how much you enjoy running, and you're a very accomplished and avid runner, more so than myself for sure. I can't speak for the other two. But could you tell us a little bit about how you got into running and what exactly you do with it?
Yeah. So I tell people that, I'm fitter now than I have ever been. So if you look at some of my pictures, when I was in my mid-30s, I was like, I was not a very healthy guy. I was not very fit. I used to love sport, but I was not as careful and not as consistent as now. So I think around mid-30s, it hits you that you are not getting any younger, so you need to take care of your body. So I said, okay, let me get good at one sport at a time. So I picked up squash at that time. There was a national coach, a national champion, and she was looking to coach someone. So I joined her. I learned squash. I used to play regularly. I played for 3 to 4 years, almost 4 days a week. And squash is a very intense game. And then after 4 years, I was kind of doing well against all opponents in the place I used to play. So I moved to a new sport, saying, okay, let me take a new challenge. So yeah, it's a parallel track to
Yeah.
my work track. So I took up tennis, and then 3 years of tennis, and then I was my wife was participating in a marathon, a 5 kilometer run where I said, okay, let me run 10K. So I ran 10K. It was a marathon in the hills in Missouri. So I ran in 1 hour, 6 minutes and said, this is quite bad. So I need to get better at it.
That's honestly really good. For the first attempt, I don't think my first attempt is that good.
Yeah, so I read somewhere that Zuckerberg has taken a target of running 500 miles this year. So I said, okay, let me start with 500 kilometers for the year. So I finished at around 800 kilometers for the year, which is around 500 miles. And then I ran a couple of half marathons, and then I realized that I needed to train properly so that I don't injure myself. So I got a coach, and then ever since last 2 years, I have been working with the coach, and I've been running every week. Last year, I ran about 2,100 kilometers in the year. And yeah, this year I've done about 1,000, slightly behind my targets, but yeah, startup takes away some of your time. But yeah, it's my running journey.
Wow, that's such an incredible parallel, like you were saying, between your different business ventures and taking up different sports, and just this entire energy of challenging yourself to take new things and do them better. But also, how do you keep yourself accountable to running? So obviously, to run 2,000 kilometers that last year, you would have had to do it consistently and had this habit. So how did you go about this habit forming process?
Yeah, so it's all about taking targets. I think, I set this target for me, myself, that I'll cross 2000 kilometers. And the second thing is, how do you put it as part of your routine? Right now, whenever I'm traveling, it's like one of the things I look forward to. So, for example, if I'm traveling to New York, and especially the first day, you are kind of not sleeping at the right time. So, getting up early in the morning at 4 o'clock and then running down the Hudson River, and the next day running around Central Park. Those are things you look forward to. So almost every city that I go to, I make it a point to really go out early in the morning, run around the city when the city is just waking up. And by the time I finish, there are people heading to work, and then it's like a great time to have finished your run, get into a coffee shop, and see all these people moving into office, and you are like enjoying your breakfast. So so yeah, it's become like part of my routine when I travel. And second is, by having a coach, there's somebody who's pushing you, who you are answerable to. And therefore, when he sends you a message at the end of the week saying, oh, you didn't finish this run, or you ran slower than what you were supposed to, you either say, okay, I stop the coaching, or you say, okay, coach, I'll get better next week. And it's just how you take it. So yeah, I've kept at it, and I've also been really watchful of my timing. I have some goals in mind in terms of what timing I want to do in 5K, 10K, and 21K. So I'm slightly behind on them. So it keeps me moving forward.
I think all of us are very confident that with such dedication, you will definitely surpass all your targets, both in the startup and your running world. But I think there was this one time that I would like to consider myself to be like an amateur runner. But once I got out of it, when like I think I just got busy with something, and then I was really just scared about like going back, because I knew that I'd be slower than I was like a month back when I was running. Has this ever happened to you, or how have you come back from like a failure run, or a failure week, or a failure month? How do you push yourself to go back when you know that you're not going to like probably be as good as you were?
So I'm going through that right now. So actually, in February, I ran my fastest 5K, and then there was 3 months of my society was in a containment zone, so we couldn't step out. Fortunately, we have a treadmill, so I could run a few runs in a week, but nothing like running outside. So after those 3 months and a lot of late nights, etc., when I went back to run, I was off by almost 1.5 minutes in my 5K run. So, and I thought maybe just 1 week I will shrug it off, and then I realized I had gained about 2 kilos, and it's not an easy process, because then now you have to put in the long miles so that you lose the weight, you get the power back in your lungs as well as in your legs. Uh, but nothing comes in an instant. So now I know that something I had just 3 months back, might take me 3 months to get back there. But I'm fine with it as long as, I don't lose sleep over that. And as long as I'm ready to slog out. But there will be times you will slip, you will reach a peak which you believe that now you can only get better. Something will happen where you will slip, and then you should be ready to say, okay, no problem, there's time, I have time, so let me start back all over again. Okay? And especially at my age, you would tend to think that the body is going to get slower, but when you look around and you look at people and what amazing things they do at various ages, you realize it's just in the mind, right?
Yeah.
Mary Kom just fought in Olympics at 38 age, right? And boxing is such a demanding sport. So it's really in our mind how you tune ourselves, and the body has much more than we take from it.
Yeah, and I think by just describing how beautiful your running journeys are, especially the way like you like to run, like I think I really identify with that. Like running early morning when the sky is like little blue, it's still not sunrise, and like exploring different cities through running. And that's something that I definitely look forward to when I go back to traveling. And I think, like me, you've just inspired so many other people to like just run with that story. For more context, you're also doing great things at your age, and I just want our audience to know your timings. Could you tell us a little bit, if you're comfortable, with like what are your 5K, 10K, and 21K times right
Not
now?
so great,
Because
but yeah, everybody has his own goals. So the February 5K I ran was 22 minutes 22 seconds.
Wow.
My 10K timings are 47:30, and my best half marathon was Delhi Airtel Half Marathon 2019, which was 1:45, 1 hour 45 minutes.
that's honestly so inspiring. Thank you so much for sharing.
Wow,
Uh,
that is wonderful, and I think that everyone listening to that, like the three of us, has been inspired to pick up something along those lines. But just to help our audience understand that you're actually human, like the rest of us, could you tell us about any of your guilty pleasures, things that you do for fun, just to unwind?
I think I pull people's leg a lot. So,
Yeah.
and then I said, did I do it too much? And then I have to make up a lot, especially with my wife and my children. So yeah, cracking those wise ones where you feel it's something that everyone will laugh at, but then you realize it might have hurt someone.
Oh no.
But
Yeah.
yeah, so
uh,
yeah, I
Uh,
can think of
yeah,
that.
I think I can really relate to that. I think even Akash and Parth would relate to that. Like when you crack a joke and you think it's funny, but you're the only person laughing. I think that's something that we were discussing before we started this episode.
See, Arya,
Also,
there's a difference because even though Mr. Rishi might be funny, he might have gone too far. You're not very funny, I'll have you know.
uh, uh, but being the successful again, like being the supremely productive person that you are, do you still think that you go through like some slumps or like some days where you feel like today I should just take a break, and like does this happen to you?
Yeah, in the sense that there are days when you really are stuck in places where you don't know what the solution is, right? And that comes, especially in startups, it comes much more regularly, right? So uh, suddenly you have two acceptances, and you would think that you're on top of the world, and then you have two rejections. It could be as small a rejection as you wanted to hire someone, that person backed out, and you feel, what did I do wrong? Could I have been more generous with the salary, or should I be more consistent? So you go through these ups and downs much faster when you are in a startup. In organizations, there are a large number of people. You might be excited about something, but then there are people who need to be convinced about it. Things move slow at some time, and it's not all bad, because that's how large organizations should work, because they have to take care of the checks and balances. So there are many times I've gone through terrible times. I've gone through times where things felt like for example, when I was leaving lifestyle, right? I didn't join it to leave in 6 to 8 months, but then it felt like, why could I have done things differently? Could I have chosen differently? But it's all about how you get out of that, look at the next goal, and once you start getting busy with the new things, I think the past fades away very quickly. But if you don't pick up something new, then you stay stuck in that position, and then it takes up a lot of your energy. So yeah, being stuck is a problem, but getting there at the same position where you're not happy and then getting quickly moving on, helps you get out of that. Otherwise, you keep thinking about the same thing and it feels more terrible.
Yeah, that's definitely really important. Not dwelling on what happened in the past, but picking yourself up and looking at what's there in the future and how you can do things differently. But I just want to go through like a brief summary of the key takeaways that we've had so many of during this episode. I think right from the starting, where you spoke about really forming like really strong relationships with people around you and not comparing yourself to others and just taking your time through your own journey, whatever your career takes you through, and how you define success as being one of your own happiness and of your own experiences more than something that's externally defined. And I think that's something that we can definitely think about as we go through college and beyond. And also just like having that energy as you've taken us through of being able to do so many things one after the other and constantly challenging yourself to grow, of taking on a startup after holding various corporate positions, of doing so many new sports. And I think all of those together are extremely, extremely inspiring and something that everyone listening and us as well can really benefit from. Thank you so much for giving us your time and being here in today's episode. And for anyone listening, we're going to link below Goat Labs and a few other resources related to Rishi Vasudev, as well as our contact details in case you have any feedback about how the episode was, about all future episodes. And we'd really love if you could like and share with your friends. That would help us a lot. Thank you so much again, Rishi. Bye.
No, thank you guys. It's been wonderful talking to you, and really, enlightening for me as well to discuss all the things that we have in the previous call, as well as all the intelligent questions you have posed to. I just hope this helps your audience, and look forward. Just connect with me on Twitter or LinkedIn, and happy to respond to any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.
Take care.